If you don't do nothing dumb, she may not have nothing to say. So you really got to think about it like that. I've been also credited as such. Oh, you're mad at everything, this, and that. Excuse me, get your shit together. Excuse me, get your stuff together. I may not have to say anything. Okay, so here is what I think of episode number 7. This is Real Housewives of New York. Now, I specifically thought episode 7 is good momentum in terms of like really learning and deciding who you enjoy, who you don't enjoy. The episode I believe is called You Reap What You Sow. Ha ha ha. Very funny because of course Brynn threw an event, which is funny because this is the first time we think we've seen Brynn throw an event, right? We intend to make this episode nice and quick, nice and short. But you all know that I could talk. I will say this though, it is a solo episode. Russell is not with us today, but of course, if you want to see some past episodes, Russell and myself both have, respective YouTube channels. And beyond that, we recap the entire season of Real Housewives of Miami and the entire season of Real Housewives of New Jersey, to which we always say, Team Melissa Gorga. Because, I mean, why isn't it always about Melissa Gorga? But everyone has their favorites. Dolores is great, this, and this. It's all a good television show in terms of each of these franchises, and we have different things that we like about each. I will say, as I was saying a second ago about episode number 7, you do get to a point where you start to define and attain who your favorites are and who, I don't want to say is the weakest link, but I guess we should say there are some people that are really performing on the show and some people who aren't. Now, at the end of this episode here, I'm going to tell you who are 2 that, though I could enjoy them and though I like them generally, they are the 2 that have room to be most improved next season should they be brought back, because this is the time where you're like, okay, no more excuses, no more like they're getting their feet wet, like everyone knows what's going on. You're either compelling on the television or you're not. That's kind of the stage we're at. But real quick, so we'll do a super fast episode. Obviously, you know that I always say Erin is one of my favorites. Why, you ask? Because I did the Watch What Happens Live with Erin, so check it out.
Yeah, like it's nothing for us to beef about.
Okay. Here's Ronnie, also from LA, with a question for Erin.
Hi. What's up, Andy? Candy, you are worldwide, just letting everybody know.
Yeah, she knows.
Quick question for Erin, loving the season. Why do you think Brynn said on Watch What Happens Live that you couldn't be trusted? And where do you stand with her today?
I think she said that because of Cheesegate. Because she felt like I was being disingenuous about the conversation, which I wasn't. It will all play out. We love each other, but we butt heads.
So yeah, I'm always going to have my little support and bias of Erin, but it's not even just that. It's the fact that I think her and her relationship with Erin is good. I'm sorry, with her husband, Abe, which Erin is so dominant when she talks to him that you're like, this is Erin's world and Abe is just living in it, and not in a bad way, like in a really good, healthy way. I mean, in the last episode when they talked about dating, she was very like, well, if you weren't going to do it at these standards, it wasn't going to happen. And I just really enjoy that. Oftentimes we do too many things that are very kind and very nice and very warm, and there is time for that for sure. But there are moments that you got to, step in it in a good way and say, this is what I believe. And sometimes when you are attaining a career, a love relationship, friends even, you have to be a little bit more of a stickler about what it is that you feel. And Erin always gives that. So the episode itself is fun. It's kind of coming off the last episode where we talked about, and thank you very much to Courtney. Courtney was the co-host with the most last week's episode. The summer, everything gets a little busy. But Courtney was a wonderful co-host and had so many differences of opinions in the best possible way, because sometimes I only see things through my lens, through my eyes. But Courtney was here last episode and we talked about this party. Erin celebrating with Abe 10 years of marriage, 12 years together. And coming into this episode 7, we're kind of seeing that like, okay, well, what's next? Or not even what's next. What is the reaction. So, you know, we learn really quickly that Abe is like, well, I gotta tell you that Brynn was kind of flirting this way or that way. And, you know, I laughed, I chuckled. I mean, the key thing here is that Erin makes it a point to kind of run that ship real tight. She cracks that whip, you know, and no no emasculating of Abe in any way. It's just he knows I should. It's in my best interest to tell Erin these things. Because the thing about anything, and they do talk openly, I think they were on The View, not them, but the topic was on The View about Erin, Abe, and like flirtation and stuff like that. And I think it's like you have to keep these things open. The only times things get really lesser, I think, is when you keep them like secrets or unavailable to you know, bring to the surface. Only when you're in that stage, in my opinion, is when you necessarily can't talk about something and it then seems a little more shady or like, why is it so done in secrecy? So I hope that made a little bit of sense. What I'm trying to say is that I think that Erin, by having Abe feel compelled, and maybe it was just what he wanted to do to tell his wife, but you want to speak to these things. These things, it's like that theory of like, don't look down, don't look down. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to look down. So if you hide things and you keep things in secrecy and build shame around them, it's like, well, wait a minute. Well, wait a minute. What is the secrecy? But if it's like, yo, babe, I got to tell you, this one over here, it was funny. She wasn't trying to be malicious, but she was flirting. She was telling me this, and she was telling me, well, if the vows aren't in, this means I could leave at any time. Ha, 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 ha. He knew that, like, it's nothing serious on his end, and it's necessarily not anything serious on Brynn's end, but it is within the rights of Erin to decide, no, you don't talk to my man like that. And I think, because there is always a chatter of, like, is Erin too, you know, upset about everything? To which I say, no, she is not. She's the right kind of, like... you know, it shouldn't be like, is Erin mad every episode? It should be what calculated in the situation, in the scenarios, for Erin to have something to say. If you don't do nothing dumb, she may not have nothing to say. So you really got to think about it like that. I've been also credited as such. Oh, you're mad at everything, this, and that. Excuse me, get your shit together. Excuse me, get your stuff together. I may not have to say anything. So I am very Erin in that space. But that does kind of open up where we're going to go in the episode, because then you do realize, okay, so Erin's gonna, she's gonna keep this. This is gonna be something that's gonna bug her later. The sweetest part of the episode, I do think, is Jessel. I don't know if you would call it sweet, but connecting. You know, this show is always like, oh, if it's not compelling, and you know, they need it sometimes to be so up there for in other people's minds to be compelling. But to me, I don't think it needs that. I think these real human things that people go through, specifically a woman in Jessel's situation, in terms of what she said she struggled with, what she knew, and where she should go within pregnancy, and how culture mixed with that, and how she was going to finally tell her mother. I just, you know, it's just one of those things where no matter what the roadblocks were for her before, and no matter that she has sort of like excuses and reasons I will give, it's still hard when there's something that you want to express to somebody and you've held that in. You know, that's kind of what I was saying a second ago. Like, not the same situation by any means, but holding in things, keeping them tight, only makes it harder. Like, if you don't get to it immediately, you know, 1 year will go by, and 2 years will go by, and 3 years will go by. So I just thought it was an interesting dynamic. I love the support of the mom when she found out. I love even the concept of like, I wish I could have made you feel like I was an open door to say these things in terms of struggle. Because at the end of the day, even if the mom judges Jessel on certain levels or disagrees, let's not say judge, disagrees, you know, you want the person in your family, the person you love, your child, you want them to have that open door to come through and, you know, communicate with and talk with, and never feel like they can't bring you something that is as heavy as this was. And it's all relative to, well, is this that big of a deal? Is it not? Is it? That's all within the person. I just think the concept of like, you, within any relationship you have, family, mother to child, etc., relationship, telling your wife that Brynn is over here flirting inappropriately, whatever it is, you want to have that open door to do so, because when you don't do that, you can say, oh, well, we got no problems, but then things are, they're in there. Like, people so many times, this is my huge pet peeve, people so many times, they like to hold it in there real tight and act like, well, because nothing happened, everything's fine. Well, but it's still there. It's still there. Don't put yourself on a pedestal, because you, I mean, at the same time too, you should be able to be like, you know, hold things in and deal with them and process as you please, but don't just put your nose up to other people because they're being, you know, up in the forefront about issues, and you're like, oh, we're good over here. But are you? Okay, there's more to talk about. Jessel, of course, I always enjoy her scenes because she is just really, at episode 7, building something fun to watch, and I love the duality between these emotional sides of her too. We'll do the next part of this, but first, a quick word or two about how you could support this commentary. Mark, why don't you take it away? Who's Mark, you ask? Here we go.
Well, hello there. Thank you for watching and supporting the show with my good friend, Randomly Ronnie Jr. Who the hell am I? Great question. My name is Mark Rodriguez with Mastermind Media, and I wanted to take just a moment of your time to let you know about all the other incredible things this guy, Randomly Ronnie Jr. has going on. But first, before we get into that, please comment, like, and subscribe. That is how he grows here on these channels. But one channel you probably don't know about is patreon.com/Randomly Ronnie Jr., where he's got a bunch more exclusive content. So please check that out. But speaking of YouTube, let's go back to YouTube for a second. He's got this hashtag, Randomly with Ronnie Jr., and it shows all of his stuff in his days in radio from back in the day, all the way up to present day, and his new interviews, podcasts, just videos across the board. So please check that out, because when you think about content creators, there's millions of content creators, but there's only one, Randomly Ronnie Jr. Let's get back into the show.
Okay, so now that that's done and you're going to go to Patreon or whatever and make it rain, thank you very much for doing that. And thank you, Mark, for being a great creative consultant. Please check out his stuff at Mastermind Media. I can't even go in detail about how they are spilling off and moving and grooving with some really big things, but do support them. And it's great to have a banter rapport with him in terms of not stuff that we do on the shows, but stuff pre-production wise, where I can like learn and grow within what I'm trying to do. Okay, so now moving on. Brynn and this guy that she used to date. Now, the first thing that'll be the funny, shady thing, but looks are not, all the end all be it. But the photos that we had been seeing, we were being presented to a much younger Gideon, which was Brynn's one of her ex-fiancés. Now, that could be because obviously she dated him some time ago, but it just was a little eye-opening, not in a bad way, but eye-opening that we were like, oh, the photos that we saw weren't exactly who Gideon aged to become. But I have no problem with the age processing, you know what I mean? This is one of the things I always say. I want to see a Dorinda Medley on TV. I want to see me on TV, over 40 years old, the skin is not as taut as it once was, but you're still amazing. So it's not a diss on that. It was just more like, you shady editors. Well, I guess there was no way you could do it because those were the photos of them together. But the point is, we saw him and we're like, oh, do we like him? Do we not like him? This is the point of the show that I'm gonna now have to maybe sometimes, not always, but call Brynn Leah's cousin. Because I said on the last episode with Courtney that Brynn is just too synonymous with the Leah, I'm gonna write my script, I'm gonna write my funny moment, I'm gonna do something that's gonna serve on Twitter. And so from this point on, I think for now at least, we got to call Brynn Leah's cousin, because she floats too closely to Leahville, and that's the only thing that makes it really challenging. And if you think about it, people do like Brynn. I'm not gonna say they don't, but Brynn never. Here's my point with Brynn: you never get to walk away, for the most part, outside of the big things. And we do love that she shared the really challenging family stuff. Brynn's Giving was an episode. But outside of that, she does these little cutesy things, but we really don't ever get to know who she is. Like, we'll watch it and Brynn will give a couple funny comments, yes, but when I go back and let's say episode 5 or whatever episode it is, let's say we're watching the finale and you're asked to go back to watch like 3 episodes before, and somebody were to say, well, do you remember anything that Brynn was talking about? And the answer is usually no. Now, I know that's all a hypothetical, but that will be the truth. She doesn't give you anything to grab onto that is tangible. So that's the only thing. Now, kooky, goofy, quirky, fun stuff. Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was very like living the full fantasy, which we talk about. It was great. You know, the engagement ring was worth this much. The automobile was worth this much. You know, it does sell her whole storyline of like, I want to be this perfect trophy wife. Like, I don't ever want to work again. I just want to live this life. There's nothing really wrong with that, but I don't know how fun that is appearing on camera. But the thing about the show, which is great, it's all sorts of demographics. I know for people who enjoyed the original Real Housewives of New York, such as myself, Brynn was the least of the newbies that I enjoyed. It was like, this is all fun stuff, but take it to Vanderpump Rules. This is all fun stuff, but take it to Real World. This is all fun stuff, but take it to Jersey Shore. It's not really working. You know, as Countess Luann would say, the elegance is earned, my friends. And the elegance is looking like, you know, elegance by Target. Like, it's not really connecting. And then you could judge me all you want. You could say, well, look at you. What did you? Okay, you don't gotta like me. That's not the point. The point is what she's given on the television, I think, is falling flat. And I know in terms of a fan base, good. In terms of people that the powers that be within the business and such, I don't know that she's really the return on the investment yet. And that is being talked about a little bit. Out of all the cast members, she really is taking some time to find out who she is. And that's just a part of the problem. But it was a chance to see more of her va-va-voom lifestyle and like, oh, this is so cute. But even like within commentating, I watched it, saw it, chuckled maybe once, and now there's nothing more to say. I guess the question would be like, would you date Gideon? Was Gideon somebody for you? I'd be interested. It would work for me. So what else we had was Jenna kind of sharing with Sai her business, for one. I got no problem with the cast member who structurally came into the show with whatever went on in negotiations, who knows? No insinuation, just a who knows, where you're gonna be featured within your product. Now that is something that would be earned by Jenna. Jenna was always somebody very valuable and such a powerhouse within this and New York City and fashion. So sometimes I think the thing that's funny, sorry, I'm hearing a little beeping in the background, but that is neither here nor there. I think the thing that is so interesting is that when you break it down, everyone wants to do this concept of like, we're all on the same playing field, we're all equal, we're all the same. And if Jenna has earned something and she says, I'm only coming into the show if it is done in such a way, I think, why shouldn't we see her lashes? That's something that she earned and acquired. And if another cast member is in the same category because they're all on the same show, it doesn't mean that they're going to have that access. And she should have that access. I don't want to make it a whole subtopic. I'm just saying, for the people that are like, oh, it's unfair that Jenna is a little bit of a commercial. Well, my dears, we do have to realize she is who she is. She ran J. Crew. She just, but a blink ago, had her entire show on HBO around her life and her business and her transitioning into design a little bit more than fashion. So, I mean, I don't mind watching her talking about the lashes. I don't mind her utilizing the television platform. And another thing I like about it is it's not so blunt where it's like, here's my product, here's product, buy it. And there might be elements of that, but still it's New York City, it's the casting process. I think we needed more of that, actually. We should even see more of that, because that's the stuff that drives me crazy. Like watching shows back in the day, seeing the okay, I got to go to this meeting, and I go to this meeting, and oh shit, I got to end up in Midtown to end up in this district and that district. Like all of these things, that moving and shaking element, I do wish we could even see more. But anyways, in terms of her, she invites Sai there because she feels like it's an important thing for Sai to not only incorporate her mindset of fashion, but she feels like it offers more of a variety in terms of what she can do within the campaign. I guess the campaign is like to grow the website, and the campaign is also because the product is doing so well. So I think it's great. Now Sai is funny because Sai gets to learn that Jenna's name is not exactly just Jenna, it's Judith, to which I know we instantly make fun of the name Judith, but I gotta tell you, the first thing I thought of was the amazing Judith Light. Nobody is ever gonna say Judith Light is not, on this level of this echelon of amazingness. So to me, the name Judith really wasn't that bad, but I could also identify with the concept of like names and how they can dictate, lots of things about you, or whether you like them or whether you see yourself as a Judith versus seeing yourself as in her case, Jenna. Even within the name of myself, I've always was early on, there was a stage, maybe when I was like 18, 19, maybe even 20, where I was like, I don't know, Ronnie just doesn't work for me. RJ I like because it's a Ronnie and it's junior, and RJ was just always like a little bit of a nickname. Randomly Ronnie is fun, but there was a stage where I was like, oh, I kind of think Ronald is the vibe, but nobody grabbed it. Everyone was like, huh? No. But to me, I would have at around 1920 would have been like, no, that's where we're going. We like that, Ronald. But I just say that to say that it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. Sometimes you just specifically like what you like and you see yourself as something else. Now, how a name that she decided to enjoy came off her brother making fun of her, that is a very special attribute that I believe Jenna has, that we just got to say, wow. Because I don't know that I would have had that, personally. I would have been in the back of my head, like he's really making fun of me. But it still works though, you know what I mean? It still became her thing. Later in the episode, we learned that Sai tells the whole group, we don't know if we like that. Like, Sai, that's not your business to tell. Even if you were shared the information, even if it's going and it's being filmed and it's going to be on a national TV show, and you did it to help your, because Jenna had stated this based on whether or not the person was having a hard time coming out of their shell. Because, again, Jenna's doing some casting for the lash line, her eyelash line. And it was like a way to disarm and make the person she was talking to feel comfortable. So while that all makes sense, later in the episode, we see that Sai just like blurts it out. And now Jenna's issue there is when somebody does something like that, you probably should say something right in the moment. Jenna kind of just like felt like tense, but didn't say a word. Now I know a lot of people don't want to live in tension, like tension, I'm tense, but she should have nipped it in the bud right there and then, and she didn't. Anyways, we'll get to that part. That's the wreath making event. And I got to say that I really was not happy that Uba wasn't in the episode. We see her in the Skyping in for a moment, but I'm like, Uba, we want Uba-isms. We want, Uba hot at the table. We want to live in Ubaville. So 2 full episodes where she's not really in it really was a bit challenging for me in terms of it being an ensemble. Not saying she's like so wonderful, and she's not wonderful, but not saying she's so wonderful the show failed without her. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we're still learning everybody, so to not have her, it takes away. The same way you could take Brynn away, you could take Sai away, you could take Jessel away, Jenna or Erin, and it would still feel like, with 2 whole episodes, we do need you in there. Anyways, moving forward, we have also moments with Erin coming to this get-together. So the get-together in itself is a get-together about, the holidays. I don't feel like we really felt the New York City holidays like we should have in terms of like B-roll, which they've been doing really, really, really good with giving us more visual. It looks really stunning in terms of the camera work and the editing, but I would have liked maybe a little more, me personally. It looked like we were drawing in terms of the editing. We were drawing from footage that was already. And because this is a first season show, I mean, obviously it's not the first season, but it's to feel like a first season show to meet them. I think we should have saw some of the magic. You know, I've lived in New York for 7 years. I'm from LA. You know, I mix the two all the time in terms of how I feel like New York is amazing and LA is, you know, hot garbage. But my point is, I think by being in the streets, walking around, seeing all the magic that is a New York City winter, I kind of would have wanted to see a little bit more. Does that make sense? Not even in a they messed up way, but like we could have, you know, maybe there could have been a couple days where, you know, a camera op would have been asked and tasked to go get some really wonderful visuals that made sense for winter vibes, holiday vibes, et cetera, et cetera. So that was like a little bit of a miss. And the reason I say it was a miss is because then when we come into the event, it's like wreath making. It's like, oh, wait, oh yeah, right. I forgot. We are in the holidays. I forgot about that. So that's the disconnection with me. But I mean, I've had my hand or two around an edit. I've had my hand or two around working in production behind the scenes. And I've had my hand or two about being in front of the camera, and radio in front of the mic, behind the mic. So that's the only thing where I was just like, oh yeah, forgot, we're in winter now. And it should have been drummed up a little bit more for the viewer's pleasure, in my opinion. So everyone's there. There's some talk about the food again. I'm just about annoyed with the food. It's not funny. It was never really that funny to begin with. Handle your business. Go get your food. But then it turns into this thing where it's like, well, Erin just says from the beginning, I'm going to have something to say. I'm going to cause problems for their event, which, you know, you got to appreciate the honesty. So she comes in there all, you know, on the face, which again takes one to know one. That is me. Warm heart. People love me. I'm adored by millions. But that don't mean when you know, what do they say? You wear your heart on your sleeve. Well, what do I wear on my face? Because it gets worse. My face, you know, you wear your heart on your sleeve, yes, but my face is also saying, screw you. No, or I have something to say. So she's kind of already coming in it with this interesting energy. The group itself is fun, I guess, but it is, like I said, Uba's not there, Erin's not there. It's lacking a little bit. Like, Jenna's there, cute, and I like Jenna, Sai, Brynn, Jessel, but I don't really feel like we're grabbing anything. There's not anything really to hold on to at this point. Nonetheless, the episode is still moving along. But Erin comes in there, and you know, I will always be a fan of somebody who kind of walks with the tone of like, oh yeah, well, this is what I'm gonna do, and that's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna go with my other group of friends, you know, the ones that I like, a bunch of, you know, family friends and couples, and everyone's wonderful, unlike you that are sitting at the table. I mean, I love that. I love that about Erin. If that is the calculation why you don't like her, well, then we can never get along, because that's the calculation why I do like her. Because it's not like she was doing that for any other reason. She was doing that because within that same space, she was like, oh yes, and you would have known that. You would have met those people had you stayed at my event. And not only had you stayed at my event, you would have met and learned and connected more if you didn't act so... the word wouldn't be ungrateful, because you don't necessarily need to be grateful at somebody else's event, but you don't go to someone's event where it's a big day for their life, for their family, for the vows of love and all these things, and come with all of what they came with. Like, let there be 10 speeches and you should still shut up is how I feel. Anyways, the goods and the bads of it is Erin does instantly jump into it and say, oh, well, you left the event, so you didn't know this, but this is, you know, whatever. And that it kind of, we leave the event real quickly and we go right into it. Now, what's great about Sai is that she goes, well, I don't care. And the truth is she doesn't care. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that doesn't, I mean, on some level, even your not caringness needs to give something onto the show. You are still theatrically, right? Like theatrics. Like, you're drum something up. Now, that doesn't mean scream. That doesn't mean throw a napkin like Tamara, as lame as Tamara is. No, none of that. It's just saying, here's how I'll equate it. So when I work at, and it's been, 20 years I've worked in and around radio. I have been around times, this was years ago, where you're in a sentence and you're moving and grooving, and the next person says one word. It's like, oh, okay, but like, say something. You have to say something. Now, it doesn't necessarily not have to not be your truth. You can be very like, But now you have to, and the airwaves are still going, and you didn't give anything. And that's what I'm saying. So it's not saying that in regular life, Sai can't just be like, don't care. Okay, I don't care, but why? I don't care, and this is what I think. I don't care, and you're being the most. I don't care, and something. She says, I don't care. Okay, well, now you're done with the scene. Now we don't even need you in the show, is what it comes down to. Sai is very likable, but I think we calculated this a little bit last week. Now, my co-host last week was Courtney. Courtney loves Sai. Loves Sai. I think Sai and Brynn, as I said earlier in the episode that I was going to get to this, I think while I could like them both, Sai and Brynn at this stage are the weakest links, in terms of the show. They're not, they of course, all of them don't necessarily know how to do this, but they're not connecting right now. And that's just factual. Now, here's the issue with Sai, or not issue, but maybe a reasoning. And in the last episode, if you go back and listen, Courtney so perfectly stated this because she really likes Sai. She stated, well, if Sai's come up was all curated perfection, there was that wonderful scene that Sai had where she's like, this is not just taking an iPhone picture, it's this, it's that, I have an accountant, deliverables, the lighting, my staff, call times, and that's great, and I love that part of Sai. But because so much of what she does is curated for perfection, it makes you wonder, is she struggling a tad bit on giving personality to the show? I know that also because, I can name 15 people in my industries in terms of radio who aren't necessarily thriving, but yet they won't get picked up for a wonderful podcast project the way a TikToker who just happened to have gotten, some type of viral success will. In fact, going deeper into that, another one of my friends works in the podcasting, he works in podcast production on a high level with some giant companies. So this is very structurally, I can name three. All three names they ring the bells. And we always exchange, because I had worked with the podcast division that worked alongside VH1. So I had done a podcast production for VH1 about 4 years ago. So I also know what I'm talking about. But let me get to the point. I'm over here. I know what I'm talking about, defending myself before I even get to the point. Let me get back to the point. The point is, my friend, we were exchanging conversation once, and he was like, yeah, it's like we just constantly have these higher ups that bring these TikTokers that are supposedly going to entertain, and they just simply can't do it in the way that actual people that have worked in television, have studied, journalism, broadcast, radio, they can deliver the job. They don't have the huge numbers, but what I'm saying is it always falls flat. Very rarely, even on the marketing level, it never works. So Sai's always a worry. I like her on the show, but she was always initially a worry to me because I was like, oh, is she going to be like the summer house disaster that is Paige DeSorbo? No one has ever done it worse than Paige DeSorbo. And again, these people that read so beautifully on paper and digitally, but they have hardly a speck of anything going on to be interesting. And that is Paige DeSorbo, who's ruined Lindsay's show, and Kyle's show, and Carl's show, and Danielle's show. Go watch Summer House, it's so good. Except for Paige DeSorbo. Don't waste your time watching Paige. Don't waste your time watching Sierra, because they're in the bed sleeping all the time on the show. It's a snooze fest, so they're just giving what we're already feeling. But anyways, now that's a interesting or tougher comment to Paige. Now Sai is a 10 compared to Paige's, negative 10. She's just not, she just doesn't have it. But Sai is actually really, really good. So my only critique here is that I want whatever is missing to just come through. And maybe it will later in the show. I'm intrigued to see what the trailer is indicating when the trailer says, I wasn't intending, or we weren't intending for this to come out on camera. What is that all about, And I'm not saying that because she loses her cool in that trailer, that is the essence of being a good reality performer, but I'm just saying we haven't really seen much. And again, if you had that stance, which is I don't care, you still have to say something else. I get very specific with all this because when I've worked in radio, I always know that like teams are like, you know, a 2-person co-host or a 3-person co-host or up to 5 in the room or whatever the case. And everyone does have to play somewhat of a role and an angle, and simply saying, don't care. Good. I mean, if I'm the producer, I'm like, cut, we need, you don't care what, why, how, who, say something. Say something. This is a show. You have to say something. You're no longer just winning by being visually amazing. You have to say something. But it wasn't even that bad. Anyways, what do we feel about Erin? Do we feel like, I still do not feel like she's always mad. She isn't even always mad. Where she did flub is when she left the space and said, you know what, you were all boring me. I don't want to be around you. And she left. She almost needed to do that and just leave. She could have got on the phone with her sister, but she needed to just leave. When she said, oh my God, Kelly, her sister, I had to deal with them. I told them, you know, you shouldn't be acting this way, Brynn, because Erin did tell Brynn you shouldn't be acting this way. And then Brynn got defensive. When Brynn, your whole identity is flirty. Your whole identity is engagements. Like, you can't dance that close to the sun and then you do a thing and then somebody tells you did a thing and then be like, that's preposterous. Brynn, you can't spell preposterous. You know what I mean? So where Erin did good is she shut it down real quickly, but you do want to be a little, kind of like I was judging Sai, you don't necessarily want to leave a scene. And if you do, you got to stand in it. So leave it, fine, go for it. But you can't go get on the phone and say, Kelly, I'm like physically shaking, because then it's like, oh, well, you are bothered. My whole stance and why anytime I've done a recap on this show versus my opinions and others, oh, she's so bothered, she's so this, everyone's getting under her skin. I'm like, no, no, they're not. No, I have something to say all the time. Doesn't mean you're under my skin. I'm just going to tell you that's incredibly dumb. In the words of Remy Ma, what are you, dumb? No, my point is, it just didn't look the same when she storms out. You are, I don't want to sit with you. This is a waste of my time. That I liked, but then you can't go and say, oh my God, I'm physically shaking. Now Kelly was the one who was a little like, well, screw them, you know, and I love that for the sister concept. I don't like the way people are not really feeling Kelly. I feel like Kelly hasn't done anything wrong, but, you know, teach their own in terms of an opinion. Solid episode, you know, definitely it was one of those episodes that I think kept you wanting and waiting and looking for more. So, you know, getting Uba back in the mix is great. And again, all of them, reality TV, especially today, this stage, this day and age, is a very difficult thing to do. Like I said, I've had tons of experiences in and around all this stuff, but to do it over the course of, you know, several months, over the course of the pressure of like, we're the newbies, but you know, we have to prove ourselves, even though they essentially don't, you know, because people will do the comparisons to Luann and Sonia, to Bethany even, oof. And so I can understand how challenging it is. So when I make the commentary and I'm like, I want a little more from Sai, it's within a space of like, I do want more from Sai. I I want more, give me more. I thought of Sai, like I said recently, when I'm like, oh, I see this big, beautiful brownstone. I was walking with my friend. We were walking to Fort Greene Park. And we were coming from like Clinton Hill area, and it is, you look at all the beautiful brownstones, and you're like, oh man, like I want to live there one day. And that is, of course, connected to how Sai felt, and she is living that now. So I think that it is actually really, really a cool thing. So she has a lot to give. Brynn, on the other hand, is like, oh my God, cast her to Vanderpump Rules. Like, we don't need to see her on this show. I know a lot of people want to be like, well, she's the comic relief, she's the Sonia Morgan, but I'm like, ooh, is she though? That wraps things up. Of course, do all of the stuff that you know, you're supposed to do in terms of these things, and we'll be back with more on the channel. Okay, talk to you on the next one.
Ronnie Jr.